Welcome, everybody. Episode 172 of Rush Roundtable. Got a great panel here. Kira, Paul, and Paul.
Hi, I'm Paul.
And so we're just going to jump right in. We don't want to take a lot of time. We're going to do Superconductor and Anagram from Mongo this evening. So I'm just going to read the first verse and let these crazy people jump in. So, packaged like a rebel or a hero, target mass appeal. To make an audience feel he really means it. Package the illusion of persona, careful to conceal the fact that she's only too real. She's got to screen it. What do you got to say, guys?
How prophetic. Even back in 89, I checked for pop culture references back in 89 and found George Michael for Coca-Cola, Madonna for Pepsi, and the Beatles Nike ads were the three biggest ones. Take an easily digested soundbite kind of message, put it out there, and the masses will love it in a nutshell. So you can actually influence their perception, lest I forget to throw the word perception in on Presto. Influencing perception, make people think what you want them to think.
Yeah.
Kind of sounds like social media.
Modernized
times.
A little bit of odd history about advertising. There was a guy that did a study on how advertising works and how people are sort of engineered to think they're making their own free choices, but actually their choices are determined by the options that are presented to them. And these first two verses kind of made me think about that a little bit. There was another study done of when generic brands first came out, and people would be blindfolded, and like 80% they picked the generic brand, and then they were told afterwards, are you going to now switch to the generic? They said, no, I'm going to go with the brand. Well, why? Well, that's familiar to me. That's what I like.
They've been programmed. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. Some nerdy background stuff.
But very relevant. Good point.
Yeah.
As was alluded to. Yeah. Influencers, at least we're a little more honest when we're calling them something now.
Yeah. And then in social media, like Kira mentioned, that's, just exponentially, so many things are manufactured, and people tend to think that, well, this is what I want. I'm a free thinker. I'm a free person. But we're given options in advertising, and that's what we accept and do. So anyway, then it turns down a little bit, hit you in a soft place. A melody so sweet, a strong and simple beat that you can dance to.
Again, easily digested for the masses. You put a little bit out there, they'll take it and run with it.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about it, the most popular songs, pop top 40, are all simple, relatively simple songs. They're nothing straightforward that you can dance to, that people can connect to. The ironic part is, of course, the first part of this song is in 7/4, so complete time signature. You can't really dance to it, but that's you can try, but you throws you off pretty quick.
You nailed it. This part you just read is that way. So
right. So yeah, because it goes into the chorus where then it becomes more danceable, if you want to call it that. But that's the way. It's just that it's a strong and simple beat that you can dance to. It just attracts the ear, attracts the person. Just gets that. The rhythm gets you.
Okay, Gloria Stefan reference there. The rhythm is going to get you.
The rhythm is going to get you. Yeah. Ooh.
Bet you never thought you'd hear that on a Rush fans YouTube.
Nope.
But what's interesting about what you just said, though, is kind of cool because the first two verses were talking about this illusion being propagated, but yet you put it in a simple beat that you can dance to and sort of okay, right?
Manipulate perceptions.
Manipulate perceptions. So The superconductor is going to watch your every move. It's going to orchestrate illusions. See, this seems to be the theme of this song. Hoping you'll believe. Designing to deceive. What is it? It's entertainment.
Mhm.
So yeah, think about those two lines. Hoping you'll believe. Believe what? Whatever they're selling, right?
Okay.
But designing to deceive. This conversation is getting all of a sudden very dark and cynical about
Yeah.
the world. So, but that's entertainment, right? People want to be entertained. And I think Neil is writing the time he was writing these lyrics, those were the kind of things that he just didn't like. Non-reflective, non-thinking.
Mass-produced entertainment.
Remember the 80s and remember pop culture back then. Everything was bright, even pastel at that point. Shoulder pads, bigger everything, bigger hair, bigger
Potpourri.
this. Makeup was not subtle.
Yet he had the raccoon hair.
Raccoon.
Poor guy, never gonna live that down. You know what I'm thinking about? This is just like totally going off the hook here, but I mean, hoping you'll believe designing to deceive, that's entertainment. But Getty, Alex, and Neil part of the entertainment industry technically, but Neil's very honest, and they're very honest, which I guess is I guess he's saying that's pretty rare. They're authentic. They're probably some of the most authentic, I don't want to say celebrities, I'm going to say performers / artists that the world's ever seen. I mean, and Neil's incredibly humble. I've always admired him for his just sheer humility. R.I.P.
Yeah. Well, he talked about things,
but it's always been talked about. How early on Rush was told, or we're trying to get it directed. You should do things a certain way. You should do music a certain way. And they kind of pushed back because they didn't want to follow the masses. Did it in the mid 70s before 2112. They were kind of like, you should do a more radio friendly album or whatever you want to call it. And they went, it's not us. And they kind of kept to that, until they finally broke through with, the story. But that's how I see them. Like they said, no, we're not going to conform to what the masses or the industry wants. We're going to do what we want. And they stuck to their guns. Right.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're an artist, you want to make art for art's sake because, well, that's the only justification you need, that it's good in itself. But if you're in the industry, what do you want to do? Well, put a single, make money,
sell records.
Yeah, let's sell. And if you're the artist, you're like, well, if you're Rush, at least anyway, you're we don't want to just be reduced to that. We want to make music that matters, that says something for no other reason than it's worth being said.
And taking each of what you three just said and taking it a kind of little meta here, what I was thinking of the entire time each of you were speaking was, they did this with this song in this very easily digestible, upbeat pop song with the deep message. And they made a video for it that did the same thing. The music video, I don't want to go into a long dissertation on it, but it's them performing, a guy manipulating controls above them, and various performers doing very, I don't want to say schlocky, but close to, there's a contortionist, there's a couple dancing and screwing up. The contortionist actually, they show her in pain at one point. So it's and the crowd is swaying at one point when the guy turns the dial during the pre-chorus, and then, rocking out, very generically rocking out, I might add, even by 80s standards. So even the video got that tongue in cheek, and we know they weren't big on singles or videos. So there's an irony even to that.
It's very satiric, but I think that's kind of the whole point of the song, probably.
Yes.
Yeah. And the
subtle
video,
satire.
Yeah, the video I think is very satire about that whole message. So a couple more things before we move on to Anagram. He can put a target on the market, bask in your applause. Reality withdraws, but now he believes it. Again, it's just whole idea of living an illusion. The role becomes the actor. She's addicted to applause, the stage, a world, because she never leaves it. And then it just moves back into hit you in a soft place with sentimental ease. They know the fantasies that you romance to. It's like that last line, they know the fantasies you romance to. That's algorithms, right?
Yeah, again.
To some degree. So in some ways, it's like this song is Neil. It's very deep. It's very reflective, but in some ways, it's very, very simple.
Yeah. Well, I got some comments to make, and then I'll let you all go since I know we have a time limit here. But, I feel like the song is super catchy, right? Super upbeat. I'm gonna say it's vivacious. It's pretty lively. Fits in with the entertainment theme, which we love. But I kind of like how in this song, Neil explores the dark side of the entertainment industry, even though, this is a very upbeat melody. Again, it's satiric. But just also I like that he explores just the human ability to manipulate, and put a mask on. And it's a powerful message, even though it's simple. And, I think in the last few years, I know I'm jumping ahead because this song was ran in 89. I think social media and just the internet has allowed the dark side of the entertainment industry to be exposed. I mean, we've had social movements, political movements, cultural movements. We've had industry moguls put in jail. We've had criminal trials, documentaries. So I just find this song is pretty timeless. And also the representation of fame that's put out by the media is also a facade and a smokescreen. I remember the first time I watched the Beyond the Light stage, I was 17. So what did I know? I was really young. I was a teenager. So I'm thinking, the guys, they make all this money and they must have the best lives. But then Getty was talking about the toll it took on them performing, almost 300 shows a year in those early years and never seeing their families and never getting to raise their kids. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because I was a teenager. I was so surprised. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if that's really worth it. So, fame is, the media and movies, they make fame look like this amazing thing, but it's really all just a mask, because it can also be incredibly lonely. Which leads me to my last comment. This song is an amazing callback to Limelight, especially this quote that I have to say in full.
Oh, wow.
All the world's indeed a stage, and we are merely players, performers, and portrayers, each another's audience outside the gilded cage. Because really, we all go out into the world, and we're not really showing the world what's going on in here. We just kind of keep ourselves together and we go to work and we do our jobs and then we come home and just do the mundane sort of stuff with maybe a little sprinkle of fun. So I think this song really packs a punch. It's got a good message.
Yeah.
So that's my commentary.
Well, that answers the best commentary of everything we've said so far, no doubt. And with social media, of course, just like I said, it was 89. Right. So there wasn't social media the way we know it today or anything like it, but still that idea of package the illusion of persona. Right. Careful to conceal the fact she's only too real. She's got to screen it. Everybody presents themselves, whether it's Instagram or, I'm old, so Facebook or, or whatever, it's like, we don't post, this was a horrible day. And, whatever, I had my raccoon hair, so I'm going to just post this. No, we try to post what, we want people to see that makes us look good or acceptable or whatever. So yeah. Timeless song, like so many things that Neil wrote and gave to us, for sure.
And even things that don't make us look good, because again, you nailed it completely. The one thing I want to point out is the role becomes the actor. She's addicted to applause, the stage or world, because she never leaves it. Sound like reality TV to anybody?
Oh, good. Yeah.
So to tie it in with everything that's already been said, if all the world's a stage, thank you, Shakespeare as well, then you're going to see the bad as well. So even not just, it's no longer just putting out that good face. Now people put out the bad face for entertainment value, and people eat it up. So the mask is still there, but
Mhm.
I'm not even saying we're seeing through it as much as you can have any mask on you want, and people can or will buy it.
Kind of celebrate it almost. Yeah. Wow.
We interrupt your regular scheduled programming here to let Nick Howley tell us why he does not like Superconductor and more or less thinks it's the worst Rush song, which has been a running joke on the Rush Fans YouTube channel since its inception. I'm not going to ask any questions. I'm just going to let Nick have at it. Go ahead.
So I really hate this song. Basically, I despise everything about this song. I despise the goofy tempo, the stupid up and down of the music. The guitar riff sounds like something from an anime show. I think the drums in it are kind of like Neil was just in the afternoon, like didn't care. The lyrics to this song are quite literally sound like something from a Saturday morning cartoon. I look at these lyrics and I'm like, there's no way Neil wrote this. Like I believe this fully that this was like Alex, maybe wrote this when he was having an evening, we'll say. Like there's no way Neil wrote these lyrics. I mean, it's just like if you look at a lot of it, I think maybe he's trying to play off of Limelight somewhat, I guess, which is kind of insulting to tie the two together. I can't stand it. To me, somebody one time described the song as bouncy. I never want to hear a Rush song described as bouncy. All right, like this is not a dance band. This is like a serious, like prog rock turned unique rock turned back to kind of prog with influences from all sorts of different angles. And I know that they were influenced by music at the time. And when we got to the 90s, there was we went to grunge, and then we had a lot of terrible made for VHS movies that had terrible songs. They didn't need to make a song that would have been the theme song to one of those terrible made for VHS movies. I mean, this song makes me think of Major League Back to the Minors, which was probably a movie most people don't realize was made, but was the third of the Major League movies and was terrible. It makes me think of quite literally a Saturday morning cartoon, except not one of the good Saturday morning cartoon songs. So I despise this song. I refuse to listen to it. I think that, I have listened to it obviously, or else I wouldn't say how much I dislike it. And I actually can't, if I go more than 10 seconds, the stupid beat is in my head and then I'm like, oh, it drives me crazy. So yeah, I despise this song. I think it's okay though that that even the most hardened Rush fans, they have their few songs that they might not quite care for. I know a lot of people don't like the debut album. I actually like a lot of the debut album, not all of it, but I actually like a lot of the debut album. I know there's people I've seen comments on this channel saying, "Oh, I don't like anything after 1982." All right, that's fair. You're missing out on a lot of stuff. And that's probably the irony of this whole thing. That's funny is that I think Presto, if I had to do a new top 10 ranking of my favorite albums compared to where I was 3 years ago when we did one, Presto would easily be in my top 10 and probably up near the top 5 mark. I absolutely love this album. As I've gotten older, I've enjoyed the album more and more. And so it's there's a large grouping of songs with right in between them a song I despise. So yeah, that's that's it.
All right. Well, again, I wasn't going to comment on it. Totally your opinion. I'm not here to debate you. I'm not here to ask any more questions other than you would put this 165 of 165. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully we can now put this whole thing to bed. We can stop ragging Nick for hating this song. 3 years in the making, this little mini interview has been, and we now will return to your regular scheduled programming with Anagram for Mongo. Yes.
for 1 second.
All
I
right.
respect anybody who does like the song though, because I know music is subjective.
That's true. All right. Mr. David Usler, take it away.
So, anagram for Mongo. Now, there was a reference, or that's sort of a reference to a Mel Brooks movie, right? Adding the for Mongo.
Blazing Saddles.
Yes.
I've never heard of it.
So 3 of us are nodding, and one of us is going.
Yep.
I'm showing my young age.
We're showing our old age. There's apparently though there's a band. I looked this up. There's some kind of band called Candygram for Mongo, based on the Blazing Saddles quote. I didn't know this until very recently. So just throw that out there. I don't know anything about it. I'll have to look into it some more. But yeah, the great Mel Brooks, getting a little head nod, little reference there. But yeah, so let's move on to this. There's a snake coming out of the darkness, parade from paradise, and the need for Eden, chase the dreams of merchandise. This is why I think there's kind of a connection between these two songs, right? Just that reference to merchandise, and chasing those dreams. But yeah, there's a tick and talk and atomic. Leaders make a deal. The cosmic is largely comic, a con they couldn't conceal. Every line in the song is just, moves from one thing to the other without a seeming or apparent connection. But I think there's a good deal of connection, especially in the chaos. So what does our panel think?
Then this might be semantics, but I've always thought of this song more as a composition because of the way it's written than a song. And I'm not, that probably is semantics, but to compose this, again, Neil was practicing his writing by then, not just lyrics, but literary wise, practicing his writing styles and studying different writing styles. So to come up with this, okay, so the song doesn't have a cohesive narrative, but like you pointed out, it's hard to do one sentence that could convey an entire meaning, and to do it with a very limited number of letters restricted by making anagrams, be it partial or complete. That's difficult. And that's Neil improving himself as a writer. I could picture it being the equivalent of, writers doodling, where all of a sudden, I wonder if I could turn this into a sentence, and it turns into an experiment, and it turns into, I think I can actually make a song out of this. It's brilliant because each line, as you've started and we'll get to, does contain an actual cohesive thought. That I tried doing this earlier today just for fun, and ended up on one of those sites, and I don't want to go too much on a tangent, ended up on one of those sites where you can generate them. And the two that blew my mind were Clint Eastwood becomes Old West action, and William Shakespeare becomes I'll make a wise phrase. This is not simple writing. I mean, and we take for granted I have a computer to do that, where you're crossing lines out, crossing letters out, and forming each sentence has a thought, and some of them fairly deep. That's impressive.
Yeah.
I feel like Neil is playing around with us, because to be honest, I was listening to a song and I'm listening to it like reading the lyrics. I'm not just listening to it in the car, driving to work, just taking it in. I'm like sitting here and reading it. I'm like, okay, I don't really know exactly what this song means. It's almost like he's like toying with us. I'm like, it just seems kind of like super like random, like words and phrases. I don't know. It's just like super abstract and very, very clever. It's just all randomized. I don't know.
There were modern poets. Poetry throughout the ages was rhyme and meter, and everything was supposed to be cohesive and coherent. And some of the modern poets would just walk out on the street and listen to, just overhear people talking, and then would write a line that they heard over here and write a line that they heard over there. And it was meant to express their experience just out on the street. But if you read it without knowing that, every line is just, I heard a baker say this over here, these two people talking about, this thing they saw over there, and it's not related at all, but it kind of captures the chaos of just city life in some of the modern poets, right? And Neil, in some ways, I think, does that in this particular song. It just, there is some cohesiveness. The very first verse, that's obviously a reference to the Hebrew scriptures in terms of, the snake coming out of the darkness, parade from paradise, the fall and whatnot. But then all of a sudden, chase the dreams of merchandise. What does that have to do with Eden?
We've given up the spiritual for the material.
Yeah.
If you ask.
Or yeah.
And yeah, interesting. Neil includes some religious allusions in this song, but he was not really religious at all. And
But
Getty said he wasn't.
But he was studied.
Religious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was very learned, very worldly, very sophisticated in religion. So it's a nice touch.
So in all of this, there's no safe seat at the feast. You can take your best stab at the beast. The night is turning thin. The saint is turning to sin. I have some thoughts on that, but I'm the moderator or the host, so I'm supposed to let you guys talk. And
have at her, Dave. Come on.
I walked into this one very much interesting what you had to say about it.
Well, just the night is turning thin. That word "thin." Lack of substance and this is why I think Superconductor and Anagram actually have, of course, we know a lot of Rush albums have implicit themes all throughout them, and these two songs seem to be connected in the idea of just superficiality.
That's it.
Yeah. So that's what we just talk about stuff without knowing what we're talking about. And eventually we'll say a word and go, that's it. Superficiality. And of course,
the saint is turning to sin, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So raise the art to resistance, danger, dare to be grand, pride reduced to humble pie, diamonds down to sand. It's almost the other way. Right. You take, instead of, pressing sand into something beautiful in a diamond, you have diamonds just get reduced to sand. So you just everything going the other direction into its most sort of superficial and
theme of
its
deconstruction.
its most elemental form. You take a whole and you break it down into its most elemental form. Which if you think about it, okay, I looked up the textbook definition of an anagram. And so the textbook definition is a word or phrase that is formed by rearranging the words of another word or phrase. So you basically take something as like a whole, you break it down into parts or into letters, and then you rearrange the letters to make another word. So it's quite mathematical and complex, actually. You're taking a whole, you breaking it down into its most elemental form, and then you recreate it to build it into something else.
So you're altering our perception of the word then.
Exactly, which also connects to Superconductor. See, this is
the hill I'm going to die on.
It's like a big puzzle.
You have like little light bulbs come on above our heads as we're talking about these songs, right? Yeah. So take heart from earth and weather. The brightness of new birth. Take heart from the harvest. Shave the harvest from the earth. There's no safe seat at the feast. Take your best stab at the beast. The night is turning thin. The saint is turning to sin. And then I love this verse. Reasoning is partly insane. Image, just an eyeless game. So again, there's these juxtapositions, right? Reasoning is insanity. The image is something that's eyeless. But the night is turning thin. The saint is turning to sin. And I love the note here. We have an instrumental interlude that's not really a solo.
Wow, we kind of have it. There is no solo in this song. Neither is there in Superconductor, ironically enough. So we haven't really touched much on the music, but it's yeah. I mean, not that Alex isn't doing anything. He's doing beautiful harmonies, and his rhythm work is just as per usual. But just in these specific instances, I guess the songs just didn't really kind of lend itself to a solo. I mean, Anagram is less than 4 minutes long. It's not very long for for a Rush song anyway. Yeah.
And of course,
but I thought Superconductor could have put one in there, but maybe they just weren't feeling it. Or I'm sorry, it's not part of the popular kind of song. They don't usually have solos in pop songs, right? It's
But in rock and roll, you were expected to have a solo.
yes, but I don't think they're talking rock and roll. They're talking
Which
about
complements rock because they weren't going for that.
We're going back to the satirical part of the whole superconductor thing. It's talking about pop and top 40 stuff, right? So yeah. And before we move on, I mean, drum wise, I mean, Neil does his usual thing. Nothing, some beautiful fills and the odd time signatures in Superconductor. It just flows really well. I mean, the musical composition just flows perfect for the lyrics. I'm not sure if Anagram was written first, like the music or the lyrics. I got the feeling the lyrics were first, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah,
it's almost like it's almost like Neil, like we needed more proof that he was a genius. Was just playing around with writing and came up with this whole thing. Kind of like, hey guys, look what I got. And don't get it, Alex. They probably looked at each other like, what is this about?
But then they would go through their vault. They would go through their vault of like music,
little recordings
and melodies, and can we fit this to what Neil wrote? But that's how it would happen most often. He would just send lyrics, and then they would, of course,
it's well documented. He would be in one room writing lyrics, and the other two would be in the studio, kind of just jamming, and just if they came to something, interesting, they'd put it on tape for future reference, and then they would just piece it all together. So
yeah, and it's like, oh, this melody fits with this lyric. Let's make this a song.
One thing I thought of when we were talking about the music. Oh, sorry, Paul.
No, I was going to say, and presto. Bad pun. I'm sorry.
What the music was, I don't want to get too much into the sound. We on the other roundtables for the album, we've talked a lot about that. But as far as the particular sound, the final mix came out with. But one thing I do with every roundtable I'm on is I make a playlist of covers of each song, bass, guitar, drums, just so I can isolate each element, listen to it, see if there's stuff I've missed. And drum covers for both of these songs, I caught some of the fills and some of the hooks that Neil had put in there, but I had no idea how intricate some of these drums were in both songs. I watched actually our Tal Schramm on his YouTube channel, MedMac2112, does a killer version of Superconductor, just flying through the set. And then Sterling Fuentes doing Anagram for Mongo. Both songs, watch their hands. Impressive as hell. So these songs didn't jump out as when you think great Neil Peart drumming examples. Neither of these songs comes to mind in the first, we'll say 20, 30, 40, whatever, but they're both very impressive percussion wise. So just want to drop that in too.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah.
I don't think there's no such thing as a simple drum song from Neil.
No.
Let's be honest. I mean, for him, it would be boring. Like he needs, that's why he has a kit that surrounds him, so he has access to all these different sounds. That's the idea. It's sounds. He's a percussionist. He's not a drummer when you think about it. So
yeah,
why use the word exactly? I'd say the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, and he does it so well. It's
flawless.
You don't notice.
It appears effortless. We know what he put into it. It appears effortless.
Yeah. He would certainly say this was not effortless.
Well, the best example, just to go off a little, I know Ryan told us not to go on a tangent, but in the Snakes and Arrows documentary, right? When the Snakes and Arrows documentary, when he recorded a part, and then the producer Nick would be like, "No, I'd rather you try this instead," but he would take the feedback because he was like, "Okay, yeah, you're right. It could be punchier, or it could be like he's not set in his ways." So it was just something to watch, like the dynamic between the group and the producers. And I wish there was more videos like that out there, right? Just to see the dynamics in the studio.
Well, if most bands did videos like that, it would all be them fighting. It's so many. But that's nothing Geddy said about Neil over the years. If Neil would send some lyrics and Geddy would, as his editor, would send something back or change this, he said he never encountered ego in Neil. I think if anybody's going to be egotistical, it's going to be somebody like Neil Peart. right? If anybody has the right to be egotistical, but that's what made him who he was. And he was open to what Getty or a producer or whoever had to say. And again, that's why we love them. That's why we love them. So
He was flexible and adaptable to change,
yeah.
which is also great. I mean, I still really resonates with me that he went and saw Freddie Gruber. You know, he's one of the best drummers ever to be in rock. And yet he still went to Freddie Gruber and was like, you know, I can improve. I can learn. Just that like absence of ego and absence of superficiality.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that part in Beyond the Lighted Stage earlier, so I'm glad you brought that up. When he was meeting with Freddie Gruber and was talking about Gruber was talking about pop songs do this, you know, and but there's nothing in between the beats, and how if it's not breathing, it's not alive, and what happens is not the hit, but what happens between the hit. And what's interesting about these two songs, especially Superconductor, but also, you know, Anagram, is that they do have kind of a nice apparent poppy beat. Obviously, the theme is about that, but it's like Paul was just talking about earlier. If you're really listening, these are not 4/4 pop songs. You know, they're, you know, that kind of dance in between. And that's what's so great about Rush. Another thing that was said in that documentary was when you can move between time signatures and the audience doesn't notice, you've really got something. And you know, this is the music in these songs. It's almost sometimes you want to like set aside the lyrics, which you almost never want to do that, but sometimes just bracket that to listen to what they're actually doing behind it. Yeah, remarkable stuff. Now I'm going to move on to the next couple verses, and one of my favorites in this song. Miracles will have their claimers, more will bow to Rome. Obviously another religious reference, right? He and she are in the house, but there's only me at home. So there's isolated Neil. Rose is a rose of splendor, posed to respond in the end. Lonely things like nights, I find, and finer with a friend. I just, you know,
Love that one.
that tears me up, man. It's just,
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like time stands still. You know, I just want to pass an evening with a drink and a friend. You know, you know, what is simple, what matters, not all of this flash and advertising and manipulation and creating illusions and, you know, all these things. It's just, you know, lonely night, but it ends okay with a friend. You know,
Yeah,
this is where we all live.
In the end, that's all that we like want is to spend time with like our loved ones.
Yeah. People that matter. I hear in the rate of her heart, if you hear in the background, I have dogs everywhere, and they're, you know, hardwood floors, and you know, they're usually like
40th anniversaries
outside or whatever, but yeah, they're, you know, they're playing some beats on the hardwood floors. But anyway, I hear in the rate of her heart, a tear in the heat of the art. The night is turning thin, the saint is turning to sin. That's the repeated line throughout this, you know. And then there's no safe seat at the feast. Take your best stab at the beast. The night turns thin, the saint turns to sin. So what do we do with this message, with this information? I mean, what really is art and poetry and music supposed to do? And again, I apologize for the dogs barking in the background.
It inspires us. We're still talking about it. How many, 33 years later, 34 years later?
Yeah.
It resonates with the human psyche. It connects us as human beings. It also can be very soothing, very calming. I mean, a lot of people listen to music when they're going through a hard time. I listen to Rush when I'm going through a hard time sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, it means different things to different people. And, you know, Anagram and Superconductor, these are like literal works of art.
Yeah.
You know, and I kind of like them, and that Neil's just kind of just being playful, not so serious, because I mean, Rush is very serious, especially they've got some really dark stuff. Like Witch Hunt, All of Clockwork Angels is heavy. I like that these are kind of just like lighthearted, and it's almost like he's just like playing sort of around. So these are some solid, underrated favorites, Nick.
Even when it's lighthearted, there's a message to it.
That's my point. Yeah, there are more things that are in heaven and earth that are dreamt of in your philosophy, Nick. I mean, Horatio.
I think of a philosopher of the past century, Hannah Arendt, wrote a great book called The Human Condition. And so many of Neil's songs, and these two seem to be very representative. There are a lot of people don't like Superconductor, right? They just hate that song. It's weird and it's goofy, and they watch the video and they hate it even worse. And then they can't figure out what Anagram talks about. But you really sit down and listen to them, and they just speak to the human condition again and again and again, as Neil so often did. So
I love this album so much. I'm glad it was my first.
Mm-hmm.
First new.
Right. Well, all right, everybody. I think we've done a great job. I have dogs back here. So anyway, anything to add before we wrap up and invite people to like and comment and all of those good things? What's the takeaway?
If you don't like these songs, go listen to them again and give them a shot and like listen for the lyrics. Just take 10 minutes to just sit and read the lyrics and just digest them. Digest the music. I think the music for Anagram is very nice, very calming, soothing. I really enjoy it. And give these songs a chance, guys, even though they're kind of in a weird place in the album. Do it for me.
I find with a lot of Rush songs, you really have to sit down, listen to it with the lyrics in front of you, and follow along to really understand and really get it. Like I find with most new albums I was listening to, is like the first run through, you're like, okay, then you go through it again, and then you go through it again, and it just grows on you every single time. For me, the best example is Snakes and Arrows. At first, I was like, not sure what to think of this, and it's like, now it's for me, it's top 5. It's just a fantastic. But you had to really listen to it, right? Like, because they don't make superficial stuff; they make deep stuff that you got to really absorb. We're back to this theme again.
That's why I'm excited about Stick It Out, because I'm on the current season that's recording right now, and 4 of my 5 picks are songs that people are staring at. They're being very nice in the comments, thank God, but they're what most Rush fans consider to be classics that I simply never gave a fair shake to. So these iconic songs, exactly. That you just made my point. That if you sit down.
Well, I don't know what songs you're talking about. So
I don't want to date the video, so we'll simply say there are songs. 4 out of 5 of them are songs that people think are classics, and we all jokingly said things to each other, including someone saying "fight me" over one of them, because it is a true classic that 99% of the fans would agree on. But songs like this, I got into Hold Your Fire, and then Presto was my first new one, so this was my baseline for Rush music. So the older classics, they were different songs. They were still figuring out who they were. So to me, Presto and Anagram and Superconductor, since we're here right now, this is a very refined Rush that we get here. It's hard to dismiss anything in this era and beyond, because they are who they are. So, that's one thing I love about this. So for people who say nothing good was recorded after whatever year, you just got to listen for it.
Yeah, all I'll say in conclusion is I've been following this band since I was 11 years old, 1976, and every new album was like, what are they doing now? Especially after Hemispheres, right? And even though I love the entire catalog, there are times when I'm listening to something for a while, then all of a sudden a song like Anagram from Mongo will just hit me. So I haven't listened to that in forever, but now all of a sudden it speaks to whatever I'm going through or dealing with at the time, and it, sort of matters. So all the music has a way of coming around at one point or another, depending on, where we're at in life. So Again, that's why we love Rush. So, Kira, Paul, thank you all so much. You guys are great. And those of you watching, like the video. Give us comments. Tell us what you think. What do these songs mean to you? Or have you struggled through the very abstract lyrics? We want to hear what you have to say. So this concludes episode 172, going through the Presto album. Thank you for joining us, and everybody, be good to yourselves.